set the stage. It builds the anticipation for what we promise will be a fantastic opening panel. My name is Jane Witherspoon. I'm the Bureau Chief at Euronews. And as Laura said, it's my absolute honor to be here today with you for this inaugural festival. So for our first panel, we will be discussing how we navigate the new era of AI innovation. And what I'm going to do is get each of the panelists to just briefly introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their role and their company. And what better place to start than with our chief wizard? That's got to be a conversation opener, Sachin.
Thank you very much. My name is Sachin Duggal. I'm the chief wizard at Builder.ai. Think about our platform as Lego meets AI to build software applications. We started the company with a really simple vision, which is that we wanted people to be able to unlock their potential. Today, unlocking your potential means being in the digital world, but for most people, it feels so out of reach. And so you talk to our AI and she helps you build an application for whatever the use case is, from the largest enterprises in the world to the smallest small businesses.
Thank you, Rodrigo.
Rodrigo, Liang, co-founder and CEO. I started this company back in 2017 as a spin-out of Stanford University's research. We build full-stack AI platforms, so we build our own chips to compete with NVIDIA. We build models and everything in between. And so our goal is really to develop full-stack AI platforms that allow companies and countries to actually deploy this as sovereign AI. So allow you to take our platform, you get the hardware, you get the software, and then you get to train your data into it and own your models in the end. So excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Abhinav.
Hi, my name is Abhinav Shashank. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Innovaccer. We are a healthcare intelligence cloud. We've probably, I think, one of the largest data collections of healthcare across the world, serving I think close to 100 million patients on top of our platform.
Thank you. Last but not least, Mayank.
Hi, this is Mayank here. I'm the co-founder of UpGrad. We are an online higher education company, and we focus on skilling, upskilling, and reskilling individuals and professionals when it comes to changing landscape from a technological perspective. So AI Web3 happens to be one of our biggest set of skilling and upskilling programs that we offer to corporates and individuals and helping them move up in the career, move up in the journey.
Thank you, gentlemen. Abhinav, I'm going to start with you. We always hear, if we don't have our health, we have nothing. It's very important to us all. What would you say are the most pressing challenges the healthcare industry faces today, and how can AI transform the way that we address these issues?
I think our general view on healthcare has been that we live in a world where healthcare is delivered as sick care. You go to a doctor when you are sick, and they sort of treat you for that one thing that happened to you. I think that is basically going to change quite dramatically over the next decade or so. We are moving into a place where healthcare is going to transform transform from sick care to healthcare, right? It's going to become a lot more predictive. For the first time, we have information on people related to their health. There is digitization of care data that has happened over the last decade, etc. It's all fairly fragmented today. So even when you go to a doctor today, you're starting with what is your name and tell me 5 things about you, right? And it's strange that you go to your retailer and they know more about you than your doctor does, right? So in some way, I think that's got to change. And we are sort of really building out systems today that really get a lot of the patient data at one place, really understand who you are as a person, what are things that are going to sort of really be important for you as you get taken care of, and then basically be proactive about it. If someone's weight increased by 10 kgs or something over the last 3 to 6 months, they are at high risk of heart attack, and they're at high risk of diabetes per se. Why can't you basically be preventative on this entire thing rather than treating them when they're really struggling with a heart attack? So sick care to healthcare is sort of I think my broad thing.
That's all great, and you talk about the technology, but I have to bring in the issue of empathy, which we get from humans. How do we ensure that we still get that kind of human-centered treatment and process? And what is Innovaccer doing to make sure that happens?
Like our general view is that we need a lot more people in healthcare than we have, like I think, like today, right? Like you go to any country. I was born in India. I don't think like we have enough people in the care delivery like ecosystem, and so every country in the world is struggling with shortage of high quality talent to really deliver the care that they want for their people. And if that's basically like the case, we need amplification of like the human process that is there today, and I think like AI plays like a huge role in this. Like you could think about this, that at this point we could give Tony Stark Jarvis and make them Iron Man, right? Like and a lot of that I think like is going to happen with doctors. We are not really saying that AI is going to replace doctors, but can it do like a lot of like the mundane tasks? Can it like run diagnostics? Can it basically stratify risk? Can it like put people in like these are the high risk conditions that people are struggling with? A lot of this could be done by systems. Like you don't need people to be really doing a lot of these things. And if you're able to then do that and let the human interaction still be human, you're going to serve like 10x the number of people and like solve 10x the amount of problems per se.
I can see Mayank's in agreement a bit with you. I mean, everyone's nodding. I guess this is something that can be rolled out across various industries. It's not just applicable to healthcare. What's your experience with this, Mayank?
Just before we entered in, all of us were talking about empathy as a skill, and that was the first topic that we mentioned, and I think the models are becoming more empathetic overall. But I think if you look at from a skills perspective, there are three different broad categories in which I break down skills. There is the skill of empathy, there are knowledge skills and information skills, and then there is hard skills of plumbing, mechanical work, etc. I think what we are seeing is a lot of work AI is doing is replacing the skills in the knowledge ecosystem, where sort of the work can be moved across borders. So whether it's accounting, finance, legal, a large part of healthcare. But when it comes to the empathy skills, there is a lot of work that AI can do in order to sort of put AI at the back end and enable people to do a lot more. I'll give you one small example. I think after discharge, nurses have to follow up a lot in terms of, have you had the medicine? Is the medication on time? Is it happening on time? They don't need to do that. A lot of that can be sort of leveraging LLMs, can be automated and be brought along much better. Education, again, as kindergarten teacher to student sort of interaction is where human interaction will be needed. But when it comes to the mundane task of actually following up, checking on the timetables, sending parents the feedback, a lot of these things will get automated using the platforms. So I think we will see the empathy skills remain as a human-centric skill, but AI will sort of enhance that and sort of articulate that. On the mechanical front, I do believe that automation and IoT is coming in, will change a lot. Trucking, I think Dubai has a stated goal, 30% of the vehicle should be autonomous by 2030. I think a lot of these things will get automated, but there's work to be done. So knowledge will be the first one that will get disrupted from a skills perspective, followed by the mechanical and the hard skills, and then will come the empathy skills, which will start getting impacted with AI.
Sachin, we were talking, Abhinav and I were talking backstage actually, and we were on about the fact that the technology, how quickly it is evolving, you know, it's frighteningly exciting, you know, it's not a bad thing, but I just want to ask you what you think the biggest challenges are in terms of the industry keeping up with this transforming technology. You know, are we on a timeline and are we going to hit that deadline?
You know, I think it's a really important point, because when we think about AI today, we jump to generative. And I think it's just important in a sense sort of where we are in the timeline. You know, when AOL launched the disk, everyone got so excited, the internet is here. But actually the internet was here 40 years before. Many of us grew up in the era of Rail Player, and the promise was you will watch videos online. And then you would hit play, and it would take 30 minutes to play a 30-second clip. It's a far cry from what we see with Netflix and Apple TV today. And I think it's important to understand that we're at this precipice of the technology where it's really still dial-up, just about entering broadband. And you see this now from the other side, you see this in the macros. 97% of the testing or POCs of AI usage, especially generative, are actually failures. They don't make it to production. And I think this goes down to a really important nexus, which is the real use cases that are coming in. They're coming in for two reasons. And I think the panel sort of touched on this. One is, how do I remove human variability? Right? Because if you get a human being to do the same thing again and again, the variability actually has a high standard deviation from the first time they did it. We're just not creatures of habit. We don't like to repeatedly do the same thing. I think the second thing is, how do you reduce human workload so that you can push it up the chain? And I think this goes into the sort of the Iron Man, it's the cape that makes humans superhuman. You're getting rid of the small mundane pieces so that people can move more upstack. And so that multidisciplinary is really important in this because, and then so I leave it with, AI is designed to replace human behavior, right, or mimic human behavior. We have three distinct behaviors. If you imagine the time when you were swimming as a child, do you have that visual, right? You can see that video. Well, that's not generated. That's a knowledge graph. You retrieved a video. If I said to you, please help me complete my sentence, what do you think I'm going to, the word you're thinking about is say. But there were tens of millions of words I could have chosen from. We're still not generating, you're just inferring. It's a graph neural network. And then if we said, let's make a picture about today with all these known elements and then LinkedIn profiles and make a video. It's like we're using RAG in an LLM. So it's a very small part of it. And I think this goes to show just how early we are. And actually the good thing is the vision is there.
With that then, you talk about the pace of it, and evolving at an unprecedented pace. Is there a growing need for governance and regulation? What role do you see tech leaders playing in shaping the ethical and legal frameworks of AI adoption?
Gosh, that's a
I think that was three
big one.
questions in one, just to put you under pressure.
So look, I've had a fairly public debate with our prior Prime Minister in the UK about the need for having sort of a balanced framework approach rather than a hard rules approach. And I think there are 3 or 4 things that are really important. And we start with what's the impact? And then we work backwards, right? So let's just stay on LLMs for a second because it's the word of the century. History defines a country's culture. And we know, and sovereignty is defined by culture. So there are 3 very connected pieces. We know that history doesn't have a single version of the truth. If I went to a child in London and I said, explain to me American independence, it would be a very different answer to a child in New York. Sure. The problem you have with large language models is they're just based on volume. They're pretty stupid, to be honest. They don't really think, they predict. If you give it enough combinations, it will feel like it's thinking, but it's not really thinking. And so now you suddenly have these technologies entering classrooms.
Yeah.
And my kids now go to school here, and there's a lot of application infrastructure, and it makes me really nervous, and I'm trying to understand what's the algorithm behind it, where's this data coming from, and a part of it is because you just don't know what it's going to give as an answer.
Yeah.
And it's not as sort of controlled. So regulation's really important when technology is going wild into the public audience. You've got the other side of it, which is we don't know what's authentic anymore. And authenticity is 2 pieces, right? One is a deep fake, one is, am I talking to a human or am I talking to a machine? And the reason I say that's important, Yuval Harari said this in this book, Homo Sapiens. He said, we have 10,000 thoughts that we would never tell another human being. We would be so embarrassed. But an AI is not a human being. And so now suddenly you've got new form of data coming into a machine from a human being who thinks they're not having another conversation with another human being. And so you've got this is why I think you need to be really balanced, right? And what I love about what's happening in the UAE is it's a framework approach.
Sure.
It's not hard rules. And so that takes into also account that by the time regulation kicks in, the technology has already gone way ahead. And so you're playing catch up. And so when you do frameworks, you're actually getting everyone involved so that they're sharing with you what they might be building.
I'm going to bring Rodrigo in because I think this leads into something that you're big on in terms of advocating it, but accuracy, and accuracy being critical. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And also, people want reasoning, and in terms of, can you tell us, how we can use an open source model that people can closely test and verify?
I'll start with this. Look, we're at a point in time where AI is coming. AI is coming, is going to change everything we do. Everything we've done for the last 100 years, AI is going to touch everything. And it's true that we're at a point where we have to think about, is AI doing what we need it to do? Is it ready to be deployed? Can our people use it? All of those things. And my answer is the following. If I think about the pace of change just over the last 5 years on artificial intelligence, we're a Palo Alto-based company. We're driving for improvement. And if you look at the rate of change for artificial intelligence in just the last 5 years, the next 5 years are going to be tremendous. Right? So if you look at the technology and we say, well, AI is not giving me the right answer for this yet. It doesn't replace this yet, or it doesn't do that yet. My response is, are we giving our people, right, at a national level, our people, at a company level, our employees, right, at a family level, our kids and our families, are we giving them a chance to actually take on AI? Right? We ask about, is AI ready for us? Are we ready for AI? And so we always talk about the fact that you got the AI where it is. Well, that's the accuracy. We talk about hallucinations where the responses aren't always right. We talk about emotions and can it feel all these other things? Can it do all these other things? Will it replace jobs? And I believe it will replace jobs and it will make us all 10 times more productive. But I think if you think in that context, one of the biggest challenges we have is change management, allowing us as a society to start integrating AI, a transformative technology, into everything that we do. And we need time. Right? So my one response is, let's get started. Right? Let's get started. We gotta get going. We gotta let people try. We gotta let people understand. We gotta let people start thinking about how to manage it so that it's safe. We gotta let people understand how to use it in a way that's practical for us and not hoping that it does everything, right? But, and to some extent, at a national level, I tell people it's kind of like we're laying down fiber too. The equivalent of laying down fiber, right? Whoever installs more infrastructure for the next 10 years will have capacity that the others who started late won't. Right, and so we're in that mindset today of, we gotta lay down infrastructure. We gotta go and train our people. We gotta go and actually start integrating applications, and we gotta go make AI better, but all of those things have to happen in parallel.
Look, I think the only thing I'd push back slightly is laying fiber when broadband and the internet came out. By the time that had an impact to average civilian life, was still a fair amount of distance. I think the problem we have is we have bleeding edge technology where people are accelerating the application stack, not quite knowing what it's going to do. And I think that's just the balancing risk.
How can we then, increase that power efficiency? What needs to be done?
Well, I think the biggest challenge today, what I see is one of the biggest challenges that we have in the growth of AI at a world level, at a world level, is we're out of power. We're just out of power, right? And so if you look at computational charts, every generation, right, the power required to power the next incremental performance on AI is growing at this rate, right? When the available power we're able to extract to power these things goes at this rate. So what are you going to do? And so it's a fundamental change. And look, there are brilliant people, brilliant folks thinking about how to get more energy efficiency, extract more power, and be able to supply it in the right place. And I think there's a lot of projects in this region that are incredible, will be very important for us going forward. And we need to change the way we use this. So I'll put this statement. In the last 5 years, most of AI was in the phase of training, what we call creating a model, right? We're training. We're now entering the phase of post-training. We're taking a trained model, we're pumping in your private data into it, and then we're using it. 90% of your AI cost will be in inferencing and fine-tuning. So it's 10 times more what we spend in training. So think about what we were already at the peak of kind of power, the cost, all supply chain. And what I'm saying is the next 5-10 years, you're going to have 10 times more need for AI than what we've experienced before. You need a completely different way to do it. This was one of the things someone was thinking about is how do you take a device, a GPU, and try to think about in a completely different way so that you're not making it 10% more efficient, 20%. You need 10x more efficient, 100x more efficient, because the needs that are coming is not 10% more, it's 10x more.
Abhinav, I think you had something you wanted to contribute to that point.
So I think like my general view on this is like, I think like as business leaders and governments are sort of really thinking about it, there are two ways to this. One, obviously, like I think like infrastructural capacity is basically going to be needed. I think like that is like a given and it would sort of really be needed, right? But I think like where people need to be spending a lot of time is like the art of possible has just changed, right? Like what can you really do leveraging technology has just like moved dramatically. Like 30% or so of code that was submitted on GitHub last 6 months was AI generated, like at this point. So effectively, like what people are doing and what you can do as companies, as countries, like it's just very, very different. Like I think like how you can think about like care delivery, how you can sort of really think about education, how can you think about like very pressing like needs of the society is just sort of like changing. And I think like a lot of the conversation generally, like I think like whenever I've met leaders, is still on the infrastructure layer, and everyone is trying to build infrastructure. And people who have no business of being in the infrastructure business are actually thinking about infrastructure. So like I think we also have to understand that the application economy of like AI is going to be far larger than the infrastructure economy of AI, right? Like and so really focusing on those elements, that how can we think about doing things very differently because of the application of AI, is where a lot of like mind share for leaders needs to sort of like be going. Like your companies could be generating a lot more cash flow, your people could be like a lot more productive, like your healthcare delivery could sort of like be a lot more like preventative, like you can like I think like think about those things. Your education could sort of like be a lot more leveraged, nuanced, personalized, like a lot of those sort of like things. Are we, and I feel like I think like in the hype of AI, we're not really like thinking about application layers enough and thinking about the infrastructure layers, and the like conversation needs to evolve to that for it to really be effective. Otherwise, I also feel like we are at the risk of like just overbuilding infrastructure, which like is not necessarily going to be like of much use for anyone.
You talk about conversations being had. Mayank, if we look at the access to AI tools and how do we democratize that and make sure that access and resources are being given alongside ethical standards, what are your thoughts?
I'll maybe just add 2 points. I think today the total power consumption that goes into AI is about 2% to 2.5 or 3% of the total power capacity that we have in the global world. At the pace at which it's going, the next 5 years expected to go to 5 to 6%. I went to a place in the heart of Mumbai, which is one of the largest data centers that they have opened up. It's bang in the middle of Mumbai, high commercial property, but they found it more profitable to build a data center than to build a commercial or residential real estate. Yeah. And therefore, there's a lot more focus going on the what Abhinav said in terms of what's the infrastructure layer. But I'll just give you maybe an answer in a different way to your question. So we are in the third wave of sort of in the history of technological evolution in terms of computer. When the internet came in, everybody started typing. We went to the laptop and computers and we started typing something and we built, but everybody thought that the biggest value will go to platforms that build the best browser. So Netscape became big, Internet Explorer became big, Safari came in sort of, and everything started feeling that, look, browser, if you build the best browser, you win the game. It did not happen. We got Google, we got Facebook, we got all the big companies, Yahoo coming in and building application on top. We went to the next sort of ecosystem and mobile phones became very easily available, and everybody said, if you have the best phone, you will win the entire race. Apple went in, Microsoft bought Nokia, Google sort of launched their own phone, but people who had the best phone platform did not win, but people who built infrastructure and application layer on top, the Ubers, the Kareems of the world, they created unique sort of proposition. I think in the LLM, there's a lot of talk about infrastructure and LLMs, and people say and I'm just openly naming, OpenAI will win it, Llama will win something, or Anthropic will sort of take away everything that is there. But I believe, as Abhinav said, that there's a huge value to what application you're building. I think today, to your point on access to a tool is becoming very easy. I think as we are talking about more compute power needed, the compute per unit of capacity is decreasing. I still believe that the human brain has the highest capacity productivity in terms of creativity per unit of energy that we consume, and sort of machines are coming to that level. It's becoming much more accessible, and to the extent that I can predict today, the next 2 years, the most common coding language that people will use will be English. So everybody can now access compute power in a much better sense, and that's the beauty of what's happening today. I can build a code base to cover all the talks happening and give you a summary in 15 minutes using 2-3 tools today easily. So I think with tools becoming much cheaper and easily accessible, you will see people not getting afraid of AI because it's behind the tech wall. I think the current evolution has made everybody to access compute on their own fingertips, and that's the beauty of the revolution that's happening right now.
Sachin, I know you've got several thoughts on this as well, especially when it comes to not being the big power players, startups, and ensuring that that access is ethical.
Look, I think, and I think that's a really important one, because the ethics problem is two things, right? One, if you suddenly bring forward the ability to build, well, everybody can do it. If you take out the human interaction at the other end, to my earlier point, you can ask it to do anything because you don't feel shameful. So I think you have this whole sphere of what can someone do unmonitored. And then that opens up to me a second piece, because I think you have to think about ESG and ethics almost in the same hand, which is, the big evolution from an interface design is that up till now we built systems that were portals that you could open applications in. This is the first time we've built a system which is synthesizing on the back of all the information it's getting. So there is a big question mark on how applications as we've seen them in the past will coexist and work with this. Will they be a part of the synthesis? Will Copilot hand off to Natasha at Builder when you want to build an application, then will Natasha hand back? We don't know a lot of this yet. And I think the last part of that is the sustainability piece, which I think we sort of touched on power. And this is the one that probably makes me the most nervous. Is that we're building so much infrastructure. My bet is what we currently think about the transformer models and the large language models is a little like Rail Player. And when we originally did video streaming, we said we need to build bigger pipes because it uses more video. Now you can stream 4K on a pipe from a decade ago, right? Because of the compression and what they've done. We're not taking into account the evolution of how these models will become smaller, faster, and maybe on the edge, right? And that's a shape shift. I think the second part of it is a lot of people are asking the same thing. So we did this homework a year ago, actually last year, and we said, we had about 2 million questions that we had answered for in the business of building software. We said, how many are unique questions? It was frightening. It's 2%. So then we started applying this analysis to everything else. We're like, I wonder where else is there this 2% map reduction? And we kind of realized it's everywhere. We work with a customer of ours, they're a big insurance company, and we said, can we look at your 1 year of conversation? Sure. What was the unique conversation? 1.5%. And so we're scratching our heads. We're like, Jesus Christ, actually, most of the stuff we're doing is not unique.
I hope we're in the 2% here today with this panel. Do you think?
And so you have that issue around compression, deduplication. How many people are going to use a large language model to build a cat wearing a bomber jacket? That was sort of my analysis. And I can promise you there's at least 100,000 people that run that query. Well, why do we have to generate it 100,000 times?
I am going to switch the conversation slightly. In terms of, I want to go back to the issue of data privacy. Our data, where does that go? Who has access to it? How we can train these base models to make sure, security is paramount. So I guess, Rodrigo, if we can start with you on this one.
I think that's true. If you look at kind of the where the world is today, and you think about the largest LLMs, they're mostly private models. They're closed models. Right? You look at OpenAI model or the Gemini models. They're models that have been trained on some data set that people are using as a model every day, but they don't know exactly what all was trained to it, and if they want to access and own it, they can't. Right? And so one of the things that we've been thinking a lot about is how do we give sovereignty back to the user, back to the enterprise, back to the individual when you're training these large models that will be your interface to everyday life, right? And so, so here's an interesting data point that after 25 years of going to the cloud, 83% of your data still sits on-prem.
Amazing.
Right, and so all this knowledge that we all have, we don't know what it says. Right, and so why is it that we don't know what it says? Because we don't want to disclose it to places that where somebody could tell you what it says, right? And so one of the things that we've been thinking a lot about is how we give you AI and allow the power of AI to unlock that data for you. Can we give it to you in a way that's safe, secure, even on-prem in some cases, right? And allow to read that data, create an LLM that's your own private version that understands all the highly sensitive information, but that resulting model is yours forever. This is when we say sovereign models, the resulting model with your data is yours in perpetuity, right? And I think that's ultimately directionally where we think the world wants to go. The world has three trends, and we talked about the power trends already. We talked about the fact, the fact that the customizations for all these applications, people care a lot about it, but really ownership is one thing that you're gonna see, that people want to have control of the models they're gonna depend on, control of the models that you're gonna power your business, power your countries. That is something we need to control. And so ownership and sovereignty around that is something that SambaNova is really focused on, and we've now created something that allows you to actually put your data into it without having to do all the pre-training, and then owning the resulting model yourself. And I think that's incredibly important for everyone to think about as they think of their journey, right? How do you actually maintain control and ownership of that data once it's trained into a model?
Abhinav, yeah?
So, again, my general view keeps coming back to think about the problems that you're wanting to solve rather than sort of building just palaces, right? On these, because we talk about large models quite a bit, right? But the reality of it is that the way this is going to probably evolve is that we are going to have a lot of small models, right? You don't need to basically train everything on a model with everything in the world for it to do a specific task. For example, as a healthcare company, if we wanted to really do clinical diagnosis, and that is basically the paths that we want to train this on, we don't want to train it on everything in the world. If we trained it I think on an index that has everything in the world, it is probably going to hallucinate more, and it's going to sort of I think deviate more, and so we need this to sort of be a very specific pointed model. And if you start thinking again in terms of the problem statements that you're wanting to sort of solve, you need sovereignty in those things. Enterprises will need to sort of really drive differentiation, countries will need to sort of keep data private, but if you think of this is the problem that I'm going to really solve with it, whether that's I think getting your development processes better as companies, whether that's marketing or whatever it is, I think from that perspective, you don't really need large models from that degree.
So we talk about the scaling up and the integrating of the technology. So how do we do that and not disrupt daily operations within business?
I think there is no way daily operations is not going to change. I don't know if disruption is sort of I think the word for it, but fast-paced evolution is just going to happen. And companies who would evolve fast, they will win, and companies that will not are going to sort of I think die. It is just how evolution works, and it's always worked that way. It's worked like that for us, and it's going to work like that For natural intelligence, it was that, and for artificial intelligence, is going to be that. So I think like the laws of evolution are not going to change. People, companies, organizations that are going to like adopt this are going to win big time. Like they just like are going to be 10x more productive. They're going to produce more code base. They're going to basically change things like a lot more faster versus basically companies who and like I think. Don't do this, like are just going to like I think like lag behind very, very dramatically. So at this point, if someone thinks that AI is not going to be like a part of like I think their big strategy, like you're already dead. Like I think just like
We've got 5 minutes left on the clock, so I'm going to start at the end with Mayank. You guys are all key enablers in the AI sphere. You're seeing around corners where the technology is heading. Can you each tell me your perspective on what you think life is going to be like for the average person in 10 years from now as AI becomes increasingly progressive?
I may take a slightly more skill-based perspective. So what
absolutely.
people need to sort of focus on. So as business, as entrepreneurs, as sort of people looking at being successful in the economy tomorrow, I feel AI is like an Excel moment or Microsoft Office moment. Everybody needs to know at least the foundation tools to start working and being more productive. So as individual, it's not really required for us to run away from it, but embrace it in such a manner that it becomes part of our day-to-day activity and day-to-day engagement. Like the way we took a lot of tools in from the internet perspective. That's number one. Number two, I feel understanding of the domain and understanding of the industry is going to be far more important than just sort of knowing the language and the tools to sort of solve for it. The domain expertise, the UX, and just going deep in that domain will create far more valuable application layers, and that's going to sort of take disproportionate value of the AI ecosystem that's happening right now. And if you are doing something, if you understand cybersecurity, if you understand security, if you understand healthcare, if you understand education, if you understand legal infrastructure, etc., go as deep in that as possible, because you can then use the tools and disrupt everything. And then the final one for me is going to be the fact that whatever that you're doing, try to control data as much as you can. The more proprietary data that you can create and control, the more successful sort of you are going to be. So I think as an individual, a lot will depend upon that. You have to focus on your core expertise rather than trying to be very wide, because technology will come to you. You just need to know the domain really strongly.
Thank you. Abhinav?
I don't think, like, I broadly sort of like agree with that, but I'd still sort of like say, we were like 5 of us basically meeting Jensen, like I think like some part last year, and one of the things that he basically said, like I think the question was like, what are we teaching our kids like now, right? Like, and his response was just like out of the world, sort of like great. He said like I think a lot of like deep skill, like I think like based things are going to be available for you like in a very, very differentiated sort of really way, right? Like so what I am really teaching my kids at this point is 2 things, like one, philosophy, which is basically like reasoning and like ability to sort of like understand how the world sort of really functions, and the second is algebra, and if like basic quantitative sort of like skills. So if you know how to reason and if you know how to basically like do like basic sort of like math, you're probably going to sort of really be like far more successful than the person like who's sort of like far more deep like in. So it's going to evolve quite a bit. What we thought was important in the last generation as we all grew up, I don't think it's like as important today, and it's scary to a certain extent, like because I have a 3-year-old, but like it's also like something that we have to all sort of like be thinking about for sure.
Rodrigo, you got about 40 seconds, and the same for Sachin.
I think AI is going to lower the barrier of entry for anybody to get into an economy, because the skill sets required to do that will be significantly assisted by AI. I think the second thing that you're going to see is all of us will have our own assistant, that we no longer need to actually learn how to interface into an Oracle database or into spreadsheets and things like that. Just tell your AI assistant to get you what you need, and you'll be able to actually be much more productive on a daily basis because AI is going to assist you.
Thank you. Sachin, last word.
I think what you're going to see is real, true multidisciplinary AI, right? With all of the different parts of the technology stack being co-pilots to day to day. I think the notion of the skill is going to change. You know, if you imagine today a good salesperson, that's their skill. But very soon, actually almost, we're in that period now, you can make everyone a really good salesperson by learning from what that really good salesperson does. So the idea of a skill will be continuously changing and actually learning new skills. I think the third is going to be, we're going to move away from our kids, at least we're trying this now, from being entirely focused on STEM, maths and science, to actually polymaths. It's almost like the rebirth of the Da Vinci era. You want your kids to read poetry, to have literature, to do art, along with the math and the hard sciences. And I'd say that, you know, what's really gonna, at least in the 10 years is a short period of time, what's gonna happen is more people are gonna get superpowers to achieve and unlock their potential.
Superpowers from the wizard. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, thank you so much, and please put your hands together for our opening panel.